Hi, I'm KB with The Beat. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, KB?
I am doing well, doing well. So, listen, I absolutely adored this film. So, first, tell me kind of what were the most captivating elements of Matt Reeves's vision for this detective film and this iconic character in Lieutenant James Gordon that really drew you into the project and you knew that you wanted to be a part of it?
Well, I think when I read Matt's script, there were there were things that he had included in there that I don't think had been necessarily fleshed out in similar ways in previous versions of the story. And Matt didn't make certain assumptions. He didn't take certain things for granted. For example, there are class tensions at play within our story that I thought were smartly placed. Here's Bruce Wayne, billionaire, philanthropist, scion of this great family, and normally we all accept him as, oh, okay, he's a man of influence. Well, we don't necessarily make that assumption here. There's kind of some wariness of his intentions, and there's a sense that um, there's a sense that he might be doing more, and there's a criticism of him. I think that's valid. It's certainly in a contemporary setting and in a contemporary Gotham in ways that make sense. So Matt included these types of dynamics within the script. Um, there there were elements that spoke to the ways in which we use technology now for communication. There was just a contemporary quality to his writing, as well, of course, as there being these psychological through lines and emotional through lines, and the tones that he set that just really struck me. When the description of the Batmobile, it really was a touchstone for me because it clued me into the aesthetic that he was going for in terms of the overall production design. There was a kind of vintage quality to it, but an authenticity to it, and it was tangible. It was described as this just raw muscle car, just hyped up, and I could envision that in a way that I could that really excited me, but also it just made a good sense that Bruce Wayne also happened to be pretty good with his hands, and he could fashion something that served his own purposes, but he grabbed it from bits of Americana and he put it together, and it was just the most beautiful, badass thing that you could possibly imagine. But it was indicative of his larger vision of Gotham that Matt had. Just the shapes of it, the lines, and all of that things that made good sense, and I was really excited about.
Listen, you bring up some really good points because at the end of the day, what I like, I mean, obviously, the Riddler is a villain in this story, but there's a lot of truth behind a lot of things that he says, right? And, if it weren't for the Riddler, a lot of the corruption would not be brought to the surface. And he truly kind of exposes, he exposes Bruce Wayne, but really he exposes Batman for truly who he is, which really is just a man with a mission, right? And so I like that you say, we get the flaws of Batman in this version because we do. There are a lot of things that he has to atone for in a sense. So can you talk a little bit about kind of just the duality between the two characters? Because I really felt like James and Batman are on parallel journeys in this. And so while they're buddies in the sense that they are two detectives really in this trying to solve this larger mystery, I do think that their stories and their arcs have a lot of parallels. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we have the chance to explore this partnership between Gordon and Batman in a way that has been touched on in previous films, but not to the extent that we do. And I think that's because Matt very much wanted to celebrate the Batman as the world's greatest detective, which is really kind of core to his comic book self, and it also drives the narrative in our film in a tense and compelling way. So because of that, and because Gordon is Lieutenant Gordon, not yet commissioner, he's still a cop in the street. It really allows him to be deeply involved in the solving of these mysteries, and so this partnership with Batman flows out of that. It also flows out of them both being kind of isolated in the middle of this dark sea that is Gotham, and not having many that they can trust. They reach out to one another because there's almost no one else to reach out for. So it's a partnership of necessity at the beginning, but we see the trust build. We see it, we see it grow over time, and there's still questions. There's still questions that remain between the two of them. They're both shrouded in a bit of mystery, but at the same time, in some ways they are for this film's a type of dynamic duo.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they are the premier dynamic duo, I feel like, in this film, in a lot of ways, because they are the heart and the core of really solving this mystery. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask. Obviously, I love your fresh iteration of James Gordon. It is truly unlike anything we've seen, in my personal opinion, in pop culture, thus far. But did you pull from any other Gordons in media previously, or were there kind of other detectives in television and film that you really wanted to pull from this performance for?
Yeah, I try to shy away from basing a performance on a performance. Occasionally, we'll do that. If it's like I did a play once, and there's a Burt Williams, who was an early silent film actor and vaudevillian actor, and I did references to him, but I try not to do it too much because it just doesn't make sense to me. Obviously, you're influenced by other actors and their skills and choices. Gary Oldman's, I worked with Gary early in my career, and his performance in Sid and Nancy had a huge impact on me as a young actor in terms of like understanding in a new way what was possible in terms of intensity and in terms of freedom of choices. But I went back to the comics for this more so than anything to understand the Gordon's arc from 1939, from that first panel of the first Batman comic. It's Gordon and Bruce Wayne. So how do we get from 1939 to 2021? 22 now, and me as Gordon. I wanted to kind of justify that and understand that. I also looked outside the window. I thought of Eric Adams, who's now currently mayor of New York City, who was a cop. And in fact, he was the captain in the precinct in my neighborhood for some years. But I'd been aware of him in the 90s during the police brutality cases against Abner, that involved Abner Louima and Amadou Diallo, when he was the president of an organization called 100 Black Men in Law Enforcement. And he was a fierce voice in blue, but in alignment with concerns of the citizens of New York. And so I thought about him. There were a number of different references, but not so much fictional references aside from the comic books. But I really wanted to find references like now Mayor Adams as justification for my Gordon, a Gordon for the 21st century in a 21st century Gotham populated by 21st century people. So that was it.
Well, thank you so much. Listen, I do believe that this is absolutely a brilliant film. It is unlike any Batman film that I have ever seen. I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. And I really do hope that we get to see more of, now hopefully Commissioner Gordon moving forward, and that partnership that he has with a newly kind of, symbol of hope Batman from kind of this King of Vengeance approach. So thank you so much for chatting with The Beat. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.